Hello and welcome to the Band Life podcast. We're doing a 4-part special completely about Spotify. Okay, this conversation became so big I've had to break it down into 4 parts. So here in episode 11, we're going to be talking about Spotify itself as a company, how much money it makes and all this other stuff. In episode 12, we're going to be talking about the royalty systems and how they work. In episode 13, we're going to talk about how music streaming should be done, in my humble opinion, what works best for artists, for the platforms, for the industry as a broader perspective. In episode 14, I give you strategies on how to work with Spotify's algorithm to kind of boost yourselves on that platform. So without further ado, here's episode 11. Band Life Podcast! You're listening to the Band Life Podcast, your number one guide on how to run a profitable band. Here are your hosts, Pete Stannard and Adam West, the Wizard of Rock! Hello, and welcome to the Band Life Podcast. I am Pete Stannard. And I'm here with my wonderfully adorned, the Wizard of Rock himself, Mr. Adam West. How are you on this rather autumnal day here in Brighton? To be honest with you, it's the temperature has it's not plummeted, but it's come down slightly.
You can feel a chill in the air. Hence the wizardry jacket.
Well, you're like that in the height of summer, mate.
I bloody like this jacket, okay?
Just sweating through your nipples through it.
I actually sweat for the viewers, thank you, because when you start wearing the same gear, they're like, oh, where's your cool hat? Oh, where's your cool jacket?
Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought about that before.
Yeah, I should have just come sat in my pants and be like, oh, is that crazy wizard guy?
It's
doesn't look like a
wizard guy in a string vest and a thong.
Yeah, drinking his muddy water.
Yeah.
That's very hippie, like, you know.
Very hippie. What is in that thing?
I'll do like you'd be asleep by the time I got to the end.
Okay, it's quite a list of ingredients. I've got my Granite Saints, the Granite Saints t-shirt on. Proud of one of my clients from Hawaii sent me a load of merch. So watch out for that. If you like punk, like old school punk, the Granite Saints, check them out. They are actually a very, very good band. I really like them. They've sent me a CD. I've got a CD right here. Look, for those watching.
Plug.
Oh, got to get it in. Screen. You can see my phone more, I think. Union Jacked. Granite Saints UK mix, and that's the band there.
It helps if you can see the picture. That's better.
Trying to get this right.
Brilliant. There you go.
Brilliant. For those listening, that was an experience. Sorry, guys. That's a CD of one of my clients. If you are in, I think the EP comes out late October. So just before Halloween, I think, the 25th or the 27th, something like that. But you cannot listen to it on Spotify. You can only buy physical copies of this EP, which I highly recommend.
Route,
yeah, highly recommend you go and do that because it's a good thing to do. And it supports them in ways that Spotify, which this episode is all things Spotify. Hey, see what I did there?
That's good.
Seamless, Adam. I'm like liquid.
Oh, mate, I tell you what.
With this stuff.
You just get through the cracks that most people can't get through, don't you?
Exactly. I'm like a bad smell.
Wouldn't know anything about that. I haven't got that close to you yet.
I
haven't actually physically met you yet. But
no, I'm surprised. You could probably smell me. You just don't know it's me. All the way over there in Wales.
There's a strong whiff of ass, but that could be me. Oh no, it could be a drink.
Could be the drink. So
Dude.
I think it's going to be on Bandcamp. I think it's going to be their main or their website. They are one of the few who actually listen to me and set up a website and everything. So
I listen to you as well. Don't pick your
that's why
favourites now.
That's what I say. You're one of the few.
Got a favourite now.
But you know what? I love the few more than the masses. So, and that's the way life should be, I think. So,
Well, I love everybody equally.
exactly. Also, what I've done, a bit of podcast news. And you may see this on the banner below, but I've set up a Buy Me a Coffee account. So if any of our adoring listeners want to buy us a cup of coffee, I love coffee. I've literally just finished a cup.
I'm going to buy myself one now. Hang on, let me just click on that. See if it works.
You're going to buy yourself a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Does it just appear, or does somebody drop it off? How does it work?
I don't know. I don't know. I think you just get the money and then you go and buy yourself a coffee, mate. I don't think it's...
That's how it works, yes.
I don't think Costa's going to show up.
So, for our lovely viewers that don't know what it's all about, we've done it. I've done it before with somebody else, but
yeah, go on, you explain it, mate.
Okay, I'll explain in simple terms. Okay,
in
buy us a coffee or else. No, that's it. No. So because we, this is the part where you all go to sleep now and just skip to the Spotify podcast. No, you listen. It's so important. So obviously we don't do the Patreon, and everything we do is on our own time, which is that's what we chose to do. Yes, of course. But if you really like our content and you like all the chit chat and the talk and the informational stuff that Pete gives. And you find it hugely entertaining, you can support us by buying us coffee.
If we raise enough money from this, we will put on a live show. A Band Life podcast live show somewhere.
With a band. With a band.
With bands. With the bands.
Yeah. Hey, would anybody like that?
Yeah.
Trolls, comments.
Whoever donates the most money can headline the gig.
Anyway. 40 minutes.
40 minutes, yeah. Episode 11. Can you guess what we're talking about?
My favourite topic.
Your favourite. This is actually a really, really... And I seem to be saying this every episode. This is a big episode.
This one? Oh my God, Pete. It's part 2, mate. Look at this. I can't sit through all that. It's got to be a part 2, mate.
Is it? Do you reckon? It's all right, mate. We'll get through it. Right? It's all things Spotify. And did you not get that from the title? The title is all things Spotify. It's not going to be a small subject. It's a very complex thing, Spotify.
Complex? It's very complex.
It is.
I'm already boiling just thinking about it.
Just boiling an egg, just thinking about it. So we're going to talk about all things Spotify, okay? So we're going to talk about it as a company, the service, how music is consumed and all that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about, there's 2 main factors to Spotify. How Spotify makes money, the music streaming royalty models, how music streaming should be done, and there's going to be some tactics. I'm going to give you some tactics. At the very end, there's going to be some really important tactics on how you should sort out your Spotify account and things like that. Right at the end of this. Okay. But for those of you just went, I'm going to skip to the end, it does actually help to know the stuff that's in this before you go into it, because you're going to be like, why am I doing this bit? And that will come to light as we go through
so
the
you can't
episode.
skip this.
2 factors or groups of people that you've got to think about when it comes to, streaming sites in general. Because Spotify is essentially just a middleman at the end of the day, aren't they? So you've got listeners and you've got artists. So obviously the listeners, they're the consumers and they make money for Spotify. Artists, they're essential because obviously they provide the content. And kind of, I suppose, the genius part of Spotify from Spotify's perspective And this is why I always say that you need to kind of treat Spotify a bit like it's a social media platform. It's because they're getting the artist to make the content, but it's at cost to the artist. They're looking at artists like they are a cost. They're an outgoing. So from a business perspective for Spotify, artists are an outgoing as opposed to an incoming, as opposed to providing an income. In real world terms, Spotify, they care more about the listeners than they do the artists, I think, in my humble opinion.
I don't think you're wrong. But...
Well, I think if we had Daniel Ek, who's the CEO of Spotify, he would probably argue because without the artists, Spotify have nothing. If no one puts any music on there, that's it. They're done at the end of the day. So the artists are essential, but I don't think their headspace or the way they treat their artists is exactly how things should be done. But that's me.
Well, that was never part of the plan anyway, to be honest, was it? I mean, when you got a big corporate entity, generally speaking, like their main role is to make money. So anything else is secondary. So they're going to be like, well, how can we make as much money as possible? And it all becomes a business mindset as opposed to caring for the artist. Because no matter what you think or what we think, you could easily turn around and say, oh, sure. I mean, they would say, well, no, it's like, well, of course, they're going to say that because they don't want the business to look bad. But at the bottom line, it's like, well, no, you set it up to make money. Nobody sets up a business not to make money. So your prime objective is to make money, regardless. Everything else is secondary. So with that in place, the artists are always going to get bummed out, even though you'll encourage them to get on there. The evidence is, we're only going to pay you 0.00.5%. I'm like, well, that says it all. If you give an ass about the artist at all, it'd be at least a single double figure, or it wouldn't be as minute as that. And
it would be as near
well.
to zero as they can get it.
Right. So when people go, Spotify's good, it's like, well, like you're going to explain, it's good on many fronts, right? So it's good for the listener, also good for the artist. And yet the artists want to be on there because all the listeners are on there and they're like, this is a great plan. I mean, you're telling me they don't sit around a big table discussing that and going, that's a brilliant idea. Money. Come on, let's be realistic,
Well, yeah. And they are a business. And I suppose and there's a much wider debate here, I suppose, that could be spawned from this about capitalism in general and how that is working and how money seems to be sitting at the top and not sort of filtering down.
It's always been that way, though,
should do. Well, not always, but it's kind of how things are, especially at the moment. Financial inequality seems to be bigger than ever on societal terms. But I don't want to go too in depth into that because it's I don't even think that's this podcast, let alone
Spotify.
So, but yeah, like I said, we've got to be realistic. Spotify, they care more about their listeners than they do their artists. And I looked at their financials. I got very geeky. Looked at their financials. So in the second quarter of 2024, they grew by 14% year on year to 626 million monthly active users. That's a big chunk of people.
Will that buy you again, please?
626 million monthly active users in the second quarter. So this last quarter, so this is very up to date. So obviously this last quarter's not come out yet because we're not through it as such. But so the second quarter of 2024, 626 million monthly active users, and that grew by 14%. Subscribers are up 12% to 246 million. So that's how many people are paying their £12 a month or whatever. Their revenue grew to 3.8 billion euros. And their operating income improved to 266 million.
I thought we were talking about how they weren't doing so well in a couple of episodes. So they've actually improved it.
Well, yeah, well, they've had price increases and they've done a few things. You got to remember this is just numbers from the second quarter of this year. So that's going from April to July? No. So the second quarter, yeah. So it'd be April, May, June, July, yeah. So this is just in those 3 months. That's a snapshot. So in those 3 months, they made 266 million euros. That was their operate. But I got really geeky and I did some maths, but we'll get into that in a bit. So I suppose the other thing to think about is how Spotify makes their money. Okay, so they make their money in two ways. They make their money obviously through subscription. So people paying here in the UK, it's like $11.99 a month, something like that. Yeah. Might be slightly different, but obviously exchange rates and stuff like that. I can't imagine anyone paying less or more, if that makes sense. It just might seem less because of the exchange rate and stuff like that. So, and the other is advertising, obviously. So if you've got a free account, then you get adverts on there. Okay. So the subscribers is 246 million subscribers. So out of the 626 million active users, 380 million are non-subscribers. So 380 million people are listening to adverts. Wow. So obviously Spotify, they need those numbers to be high for their non-subscription.
Drop their prices then?
Well, they're not going to do that, and you'll see why. You'll see why in a second.
How do the bands make any money? They don't really make any, because I know we've talked about it briefly. We don't have to talk about it now, but it always baffles me. I mean, it's like, okay, so for each, because you have to have 1,000 streams to actually get 0.5%, is it?
No, that's the threshold to actually start getting, when they're going to start paying you a royalty. Right. So when you get 1,001 streams, you will then into your bank account, there should be a royalty worth of 1,001 streams. But they're not going to pay that until you hit that threshold. So you would still get that money. It's just you're not going to get it until you reach a certain level as such. Right. And those that never reach that level in that year, well, that money just gets pocketed by Spotify, which isn't actually a big thing, because a lot of the DSPs, so if you're with DistroKid or someone like that, I'm not sure which ones, but a lot of them do have thresholds anyway. So Spotify basically went, well, we're paying the DSPs, the digital service providers, but they're pocketing that money. All they've done is cut off the DSPs at the knees, basically. The money that the artist was never going to get anyway, because they just didn't have enough streams to get it through the processes of the DSPs. So
which is deliberately set up, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of swings and roundabouts at the end of the day. And then we will get on to the DSPs and why I think they're a waste of space. But anyway, but obviously, going back to sort of advertising, if you've got a platform that has advertising on it, you need as many people on that platform as possible. So when they're obviously pitching to advertising agencies as to why advertisers should advertise with them, they can turn around and say, well, we've got 380 million ears that your advert is going to get into. Yeah, that's a big number. And obviously the bigger the number is, the more they can charge. This is why something like the Super Bowl, companies pay billions for like 30 seconds of airtime at the Super Bowl because it's the most watched sporting event in the world. So it's like over 1 billion people watch the Super Bowl every year.
What a waste of money.
It seems, but they obviously make that money back because they're very good at going, okay, that is worth that investment. Because I'm not talking about small companies. I'm talking like Nike, stuff like that. You know, these aren't small companies. These are companies that they know what they're doing when it comes to marketing, and you know whether or not that's a good or a bad investment. You know, they're not going to chuck away $1 billion at the end of the day. So there's got to be a little bit of something there to it. But why? Because that kind of led me down kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole when I was sorting this episode out. Because I kind of like, well, what's better then? Is it better to have subscriptions or advertising? You know, because obviously, if advertising is better, then why isn't the whole thing just free? Yeah, and you just have adverts for everyone. So I did.
Nobody likes them.
Nobody likes them. Well, this is the thing: is that if you're paying a subscription to Spotify, you're not actually paying for the music. You're paying to not listen to adverts.
Yeah.
So
don't have them because nobody likes them. Everybody hates adverts.
so you would just have it as
comments. Am I right?
Based.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I did the maths, taking their figures and things like that. Okay, so if you take their 246 million subscribers, okay, Spotify makes 3,072,000,000 per month from its users. If you times 246 million by £12 per month, you get 3,072,000,000 per month. That's a lot of money. So per year, so then if you times that number by 12 to get a yearly amount, that's 36,864,000,000 per year gross.
Wow.
That's just from subscribers. That's a gross income. Again, that's a lot of money. So then I looked at how much they get from advertising. And this is from Spotify themselves because they have to be transparent about this stuff legally. Spotify makes 13.3 billion euros a year from advertising. So if you put subscriptions and advertising together, a total gross income of 50,164,000,000 they receive in money. Do you even know how many zeros? It's an eye-watering amount of money. 50,100,000,000.
You could buy
164 million.
You buy a city or a fucking country with that.
You can. That's a nation type money, isn't it? Well, nations tend to go in like the UK would talk about trillions, but you could get into smaller countries. Yeah, 50 billion. That's. I mean, imagine what that could do for the NHS, for example. Yeah.
Imagine what that money could do for struggling bands like us.
Yeah, well,
because we get what 0.05%.
Yeah,
just to reiterate that again.
Or do we?
Oh, here we go. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. The royalty thing will be explained. I've got a little analogy for you, Adam, that I think you're going to like. You're going to like it. You're going to like it. So stay tuned for that. The split. Do you know what the split is between Spotify and its artists?
I don't. So regale me with your argument.
Spotify, of that total 50 billion, 70% will go to the artist and 30% will be kept by Spotify. For their
rubbish.
Well, apparently so.
Rubbish.
According to them,
to the very rich CEO. Yes. Okay.
So 35,114,800,000 goes to artists, and the 30% is 15,049,200,000 goes to Spotify.
I'm sorry, if I was a business entrepreneur, I wouldn't give 30%. I'd reverse the numbers. Because I'm in a business. I'm not losing all that. I'm working hard.
Well, I think the problem with that, when you start doing something like that, because you've also got to remember that all they're really doing is being a middleman. The middleman generally doesn't take more than the two entities that it's in the middle of. So when you kind of think of it from that point of view, should they? I don't think they should. I don't think makes a good business practice, because you're trying to balance these two areas, and if you are getting more than certainly the people who are providing most of the money sort of coming in, then at some point the whole thing is just going to go from a business perspective.
I thought that's what was happening with it.
No, most of it goes to the artist. But stay tuned, because you'll see why artists are getting a little bit, well, I say a little bit of a fisting. This is what it kind of begs the question, is like, why have non-subscription, I suppose. And that I looked into, and the UK government actually did a investigation. They did a green paper select committee investigation back in 2021, where the UK government looked into the economics of music streaming. And Spotify justified their free accounts by stating that with free accounts, piracy would be more prevalent within the industry. So kind of going back to the way that Napster sort of came about in the 90s, where, you know, it was kind of advertised by Napster that there's just sharing, so there's no piracy going down. But then over time, legally, they've kind of fallen down the side where actually you were just pirating music. At the end of the day, you were giving away music for nothing, essentially. So I kind of get it from that perspective. But there's another perspective that I thought of, is that, well, no other streaming site does that. They don't have free accounts. Like Netflix, Amazon, Disney, they don't have free accounts. You know, so the content is irrelevant for this portion of the discussion. They don't seem to be fussed about piracy. I mean, I'm sure you can go online and get whatever you want, film or TV or whatever, without paying for it. But they don't go, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll have a free account with adverts. In fact, Amazon Prime now, even though you're paying for it, they still come up with adverts. They've changed it. Yeah. So it's just like, well, hang on. What am I paying? I'm paying a subscription for that. But then I kind of think back, and I think back to the early days. Well, even Sky, for example, when you were paying for Sky, you had adverts as well. But you'd have a monthly subscription, and they would get an advertising revenue as well. So it's kind of one of those things that you just kind of go, okay, seems a bit weird. In my humble opinion, and I'm not sure, you may or may not agree with this, but I think the fact that you have these free accounts, I think it's completely devalued music, to be honest. This is why I think a lot of people see music as it's just not worth anything, because they don't actually go out and buy it anymore. There's and like I said, even if you pay a subscription, you're not paying for the music itself. You're paying to not listen to adverts. I even looked at what subscribers of Spotify get, and the top of that list is ad-free music listening.
But so, if you want to run your artist account, though, you can't do it on a free account. You have to.
No, you have to have a subscription. I'm looking at this from a more of a listener's point of view in this sort of segment, I suppose. But you can also download to listen to offline stuff. Play songs in any order. Apparently, there's a higher quality of audio. You can listen with friends in real time. and you organize listening queue, as they call it.
Who uses that?
It's a playlist. So it's playlisting, which we will get onto again in the tactics of this about playlisting. So yeah, I think it's quite an important think about, at least, or acknowledge, is that, you know, no one's paying. Even if you're paying a subscription, you're not paying for music. You're paying for all of these other things. You know, it's not like they're saying, "Oh, you can only listen to Taylor Swift if you pay £10 a month," or something like that. You can't listen to these groups of people, something like that. And of course, the other side, the other factor from that. So that's kind of the listener perspective on it. Is, you know, Spotify makes a huge amount of money.
50 billion.
50 billion a year.
Wow.
Okay. By my maths. And actually, if my maths is wrong, please put that in the comments. Okay. If you're on a commenting platform for this.
Or trolling, either one, don't matter.
Oh, troll. Yeah. Or you can troll me if you like. I don't care. This is how much respect I have for trolls. But anyway, if my maths is incorrect, because maths is not my first, and once you get into these billions and hundreds of millions of stuff, my head starts to go a little bit. But
well, I don't have any control of it. My brain just goes off. Over there, there's wood. Go, don't make something.
It's like an on-off switch.
Yeah, literally it is. I tried desperately. I'm like, my brain goes zoom. I'm like, oh, okay, I've lost you.
So I did double check my answers and ran it through my own kind of how I got to the process of it. So if any of that is wrong, please feel free to correct me. But yeah, I would love to know more. The other factor is the artists themselves, the artists on Spotify. I mean, if Spotify is so bad, why is everyone on there? This is the thing I never get. Whenever I talk about Spotify on my content, I always get someone going, fair play for artists. And every time I'm like, well, why are you on there then? If it's so bad, if you hate it so much, why are you in that ecosystem? Probably because of audience size. At the end of the day, 626 million people. So music discovery is pretty big. So that's going to be your first pull as an artist.
I think it's highly saturated myself.
Well, then we will get on to that as well, Adam.
Cool.
All in good
I'll
time.
shut up then and just listen. I'm going to cut my nails while I listen.
Cut my nails. Or paint your nails.
No.
So there's that first pull of, it's a huge amount of people, 626 million people. Artists, they share their platform with their influences and their idols. Before streaming, the chances of you being
That close.
played next to Metallica or whoever, it was pretty much net zero at that point. But they have some decent analytics and things like that about your fan base. There's also like recognition of your work from playlisting curators. Yeah, the analytics isn't actually too bad. Yeah, so recognition of your work through playlisting from curators, users and editorial stuff. Again, so you can really kind of get that recognition. Also, a following on Spotify is actually closer to your fan base, I think, than social media followers are. Mainly because the artists get better data. They get analytics about people listening to their music. If you want to know where that is on your artist page, it's in the listener conversion metrics section of your Spotify for Artists page. If you go in there, you should get all of this analytical stuff. It's a little tip for you people. So obviously, the big one, royalties. They will pay you royalties at some point. In the end, if you get your 1,000 streams on your song, you will get a royalty, or you should get a royalty. Whether or not the DSPs will let them go is a whole other thing. Bad Life Podcast!